how to spot misinformation and bad critiques and bad criticisms about Bitcoin. So, as I've said before, I have read every single book that has ever been written that is anti Bitcoin, anti cryptocurrency, anti just anything to do with this sort of thing. And I've read them all. And I wanted to give you a framework for how to think about and how to read articles when you see them. So, you'll see articles all the time about, or not all the time, they've really fallen off a lot because it just, the kind of people who criticize Bitcoin is getting sort of more and more less common and less mainstream. But the favorite tactic, which I think you need to understand, is the favorite tactic that all of the critics of Bitcoin do is they draw analogies with other things that do not apply to Bitcoin. Let me tell you what I mean. When I tell you what I mean is they will say um, Bitcoin is never going to work, and then crypto is rife with scams. Now you'll notice they changed from saying the word Bitcoin to the word crypto. So they say Bitcoin is never going to work, and then they say crypto is rife with scams, and then they give a bunch of examples of scams in the crypto industry that do not apply to Bitcoin. And of course, they hope the reader doesn't notice that they switched. They switched from talking about Bitcoin to talking about crypto. And then they'll make a number of arguments about why Bitcoin will never work. And then they will use analogies from gold, like the yellow metal of gold. But without ever, without hoping that you never notice that, but wait, the criticisms they're making about gold don't apply to Bitcoin. They may apply to gold. And so they'll basically say, look, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, and crypto is rife with scams. Well, crypto is rife with scams, but that's not Bitcoin, and that has nothing to do with Bitcoin. That's all these junk, meme coins and stupid stuff that, that's out there. So then they'll say, Bitcoin is like digital gold. And then they'll make a bunch of critiques of gold, hoping you think those same critiques apply to Bitcoin when they don't. And then they'll say, in addition, there is flaws related to blockchain technology. And then they'll point out a bunch of flaws related to the use of blockchain technology to manage A, B, or C, failing to notice that none of that applies to Bitcoin. And and then they will point to flaws related to, well, Bitcoin's attempting to replace the fiat banking system. And then they'll say something positive about the fiat banking system, which is like US dollars, and they'll fail to acknowledge that that positive thing is actually also positive for Bitcoin. Or if they say something negative about the current financial system, then they'll act like it applies to Bitcoin when it doesn't. Um, so that off the top of my head, those are the four most common bait and switch tactics that opponents of Bitcoin use. They will use a bait and switch talking about Bitcoin and then switch to cryptocurrencies. They'll talk about Bitcoin and then switch to blockchain technology. They'll talk about Bitcoin and then switch to gold, or they'll talk about Bitcoin and then switch to fiat currencies and make accusations that don't apply to Bitcoin. So they do that all the time, and it's really fascinating because if you know what to look for, then every one of these articles you can say, but wait, they just used Ethereum to try to make a point about Bitcoin, but what they're accusing Ethereum of doing, which may or may not even be true, totally doesn't even apply to Bitcoin. What they are accusing, gold being difficult to A, B, or C, well, that's true of gold, but it's not true of Bitcoin. So I have probably read more anti Bitcoin and anti crypto literature than just about anybody else on the planet, unless somebody has done what I've done, which is make it a personal goal to read literally 100% of everything that's ever been written, certainly in book form. And then I read as many of the articles as I can as well, although obviously there's a lot more articles. So I've read 100% of the anti Bitcoin and anti crypto books. And I've read most of the anti crypto and anti Bitcoin articles, and they all use just constant bait and switch. And the reason they have to do a bait and switch is because the accusations they want to lob or hurl at Bitcoin do not apply to Bitcoin. So they can't use Bitcoin as the reason that whatever it is a bad thing or is a problem or whatever, because it doesn't apply to Bitcoin, which is why they have to use the bait and switch, because they can't attack Bitcoin, so they have to switch to blockchain or switch to cryptocurrencies generally or switch to gold or switch to problems in the fiat financial system or something like that. So that is a very helpful rubric for how to think about that and a framework for how to read criticisms and just constantly ask yourself, wait, the analogy they just used, was that a analogy of Bitcoin or something else? Was the example they just used, was that Bitcoin or something else? Was the accusation they just made, was that specific to Bitcoin or to something else? And the answer is if they're doing a bait and switch, the reason is because it doesn't apply to Bitcoin. If it did apply to Bitcoin, they would make the accusation directly of Bitcoin. Because why bother to draw from examples about Ethereum or about gold or about blockchain? Why would you have to appeal to examples or illustrations or data points or anecdotes? Why would you have to appeal to anecdotes and examples and illustrations about anything other than Bitcoin if you're trying to attack Bitcoin? If Bitcoin actually has problems you think it has, then you can just point them out. But the problem for these opponents of Bitcoin is Bitcoin actually doesn't have those problems, and so they have to hope you believe it has those problems based on Ethereum or based on gold or based on blockchain technology or based on some meme coin or some scam related to some ridiculous cryptocurrency with a dog or a cat's face on it or something crazy. So keep an eye out because virtually 100% of the criticisms of Bitcoin have some sort of bait and switch built in because they just can't make the accusation of Bitcoin itself because Bitcoin just doesn't apply in the situation that they're talking about. It just doesn't apply to Bitcoin. So keep your eyes and ears out when time you read something. And if you encounter any article, book, anything that is anti-Bitcoin or anti-crypto, please send it to me. Love reading that content just to see if there's some new angle somebody's thought of that I haven't seen before. Would love to read it. So anything you see that is anti-Bitcoin, or that, claims to attack it some way or claims that Bitcoin's dead or they found a fatal flaw, blah, 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 just send it my way. I love that sort of stuff. And if it, looks interesting and I think others would benefit, I'll do sort of a live article review, on Facebook Live. So thanks everyone. Have a great day. Appreciate it. Bye.